Right, everyone, time for a double issue review of 33 and 34 of Combat Patrol. I'm doing it as a double because it's a Chaos Space Marine double issue, which is absolutely cool because Chaos Space Marines are just brilliant. Everything about them is kind of just... the way that they look, their aesthetic, the kind of the twistedness of them, the fact that they look like Space Marines but are very clearly not Space Marines due to one major factor, that they are rebels. They are twisted, in some cases so hideously twisted and corrupted that they could barely be Space Marines anymore by most standards. So I'm going to start off with issue number 33, which is part 1 of the Legion, and straight into the how to build. Good thing about these miniatures is you do have quite a bit of freedom with regards to the shoulder pads and the head combinations, which is always good to have tons of spare heads for different purposes. The heads themselves are generic in a sense that for the most part they're designed to be general Chaos Space Marines and not kind of dedicated to a particular god. However, I would say it's worth noting that there is kind of this head here, 128, that always feels more Nurgle to me, and 127 that has a slight feeling of sneechness, but other than that they're generic. Now the shoulder pads again have lots of demon motifs on them. Some of them are more inclined towards kind of skulls, so definitely more Khorne. Then you've got things that could be, again, implied to be more Nurgle based, but the idea being, again, that they're generic and they're general Chaos Undivided. Now, Chaos Undivided is a very important concept, so we are getting towards the end of the collection, if I'm right, World Eaters, who are Khorne Berserkers. So they're very dedicated to a particular god. However, what you can do with general Chaos Space Marines like these is you can kind of paint them as if they're moving towards a particular god. So if you painted them all red, then you could say that they are Khorne aligned. However, if you paint them all red, you could also go for the what are they called now? The Red Corsairs. So again, you can paint them to say they're dedicated to a particular god, even if they're not specifically from a faction that follows that god. I'll explain that as we go through anyway. A lot of the figures have a clear monopose to them. That makes them, in a lot of ways, easier to tailor for things like the heavy bolter. I'm going to basically do a video on how to build each one of these separately because there's a lot of work to each one. I'm also going to see if I can get around to showing you how to put together the ones that aren't in these instructions, like the missile launcher and so on. You can get a good combination of troops with bolters and with chainswords. Again, you can mix and match, you can add special weapons. Just be careful not to go over the top with the special weapons though, because you can only really have like 2 special or 2 heavy weapons per squad. So don't do the whole thing up with all the best weaponry, because then they'll technically be unplayable. Right, the Black Legion. So this is our core focus of the Combat Patrol. The Black Legion are inherently Chaos Undivided, and that basically means that they are aligned to no specific god. They are ruled by Abaddon the Despoiler, who was the first captain of the Sons of Horus during the Horus Heresy, but inevitably after Horus was destroyed, he eventually became the ruler of the Sons of Horus and renamed them the Black Legion. Now, because of that, and this is something that's important to look into, and by the way, that is Horus himself. the War Master Horus, the arch traitor, and basically he caused the Horus heresy. Anyway, he's a amazingly well written character in my mind. It's definitely worth looking up. Right, this is the thing. If you're going for a Chaos Undivided, you've got quite some good options with regards to troop types. So I'll just kind of cover some core concepts. Your general Legionnaires would be classed as undivided. However, it's commonly accepted that you can mark them to one of the Chaos Gods. Now, just because they're marked doesn't mean they automatically become a Berserker, a Rubric Marine, a Plague Marine, a Noise Marine. What it means is that they're just set on the path to becoming one of something similar. The gods themselves, these specific types of troops. Now, you'll see here that these are all Black Legion variants of them. Any Chaos Space Marine can become a Khorne Berserker, basically by following the path of Khorne, and they end up looking like this. Now, the most famous Khorne Berserkers are the World Eaters, who tend to wear red, partly because, it's easier to paint red when you are covered in blood. Now, one of the core things about them is, though, any Chaos Space Marine can inevitably become a Khorne Berserker. Any Chaos Space Marine can become a Plague Marine if they follow the path of Nurgle. Again, though, it's actually something to think about here. The Death Guard are the most well-known Plague Marines, because their entire Death Guard faction became Plague Marines, but any Chaos Space Marine dedicates themselves to Nurgle can become a Plague Marine. Noise Marines follow Slaanesh. The most famous Slaaneshi dedicated legion are the Emperor's Children, who are all, well, they're not all Noise Marines, but they are all dedicated to Slaanesh, of which they have specialised troops who are Noise Marines. But again, any Chaos Space Marine could become a Noise Marine if they followed that path. Here's the big difference: the Rubric Marines. They are for Sneech. However, just because you go down the path of following Sneech does not mean you will become a Rubric Marine. Rubric Marines, last time I checked the law, can only come from the Thousand Sons Legion. The Thousand Sons ended up serving Sneech due to, well, a lot of bad choices. And they started to corrupt. So Ahriman, the Sorcerer Supreme, first sorcerer I think it is, of the Thousand Sons, thought, I'm going to stop the mutation. And he devised a rubric. Except it went wrong. Only the actual sorcerers, proper powerful sorcerers, actually survived it. All the other Thousand Sons basically ended up as dust trapped in some armour, and they are controlled by the sorcerers. Now, I don't know. I think the idea is basically that once a Thousand Son Rubric Marine kind of dies, it doesn't really die. It just kind of gets reanimated later on, and that's how they keep up their numbers. I think someone suggested, I think I read it somewhere, that when the Thousand Sons do manage to create new Marines, when they get themselves hold of some usable gene seed, I think the idea is that as soon as it's implanted in a Space Marine, the rubric carries on working and turns that new Space Marine to dust. The fact is, Rubric Marines only exist within the Thousand Sons, but what might happen is a sorcerer of the Thousand Sons might join a different legion, and then they will bring their retinue with them. So that's why it's very important that if you are collecting any of the other forces for an undivided one, it's just a little bit of knowledge to actually have that these can exist no matter what in your force. But you've got to kind of come up with a bit of headcanon about why you've got rubric marines. And a good way to do that is just have a sorcerer and claim that sorcerer came from the Thousand Sons and brought his rubric marines with him. Okay. A little bit on Abaddon the Despoiler. First captain of the Sons of Horus, now War Master of the Black Legion. Again, some very nice lore behind him to look into. Yeah, and you know, this idea that he's you can see here he's got this massive power claw. He took that from Horus upon Horus's demise, absolute destruction, to be fair. Abaddon carries a demon sword. He has the Mark of Chaos Ascendant, and he has the Talon of Horus. He also, at the moment, flies around on a planet killer when he's not flying around in the flagship, the Vengeful Spirit. Some nice bit of reading to do in this one, which is always good. Learning about the backstories and the lore. And then we've got the rules on Chaos Space Marines and how to use them. Chaos Space Marine unit names, so you can personalize your units, you know, always useful. I'm just having a look there. I'm having a look at some of the, yeah, so you've got that looks like the entire combat patrol with the Marines, Legionnaires, the Apostle, the Hellbrute, and the Havocs. The good thing about the Havocs, in all honesty, is if you've set up one of these guys as a heavy weapon, if you want a different heavy weapon in your troops, just swap your heavy bolter from these with whichever weapon you want from here, and then you've got a bit of variety. Okay, then we are heading on to a few more core rules about how to make attacks, how to inflict damage. Interesting. It's just some rules. There's no actual scenario to play through, which is quite interesting. Right then. Now, just so that's our issue number 33. Now let's have a look at issue number 34. Getting on to how to paint them. Because it's the Black Legion, you're going to use Abaddon Black and lots of Lead Belcher to pick out some chains, some bolts, and so on. Gold trims, because if you know what, sometimes it's the Black Legion for some reason really goes for gold trims. Don't ask me why. I don't know. It's not that I dislike gold. It's just I feel it's used too aggressively on too many units, on too many armies. If you look at the Chaos Space Marines, it's like constantly there across so many of them. You know, the Emperor's Children, the Black Legion, the Night Lords, the gold is too much for me. In some ways it helps the black look blacker, but I don't know, it just looks too grand and too regal for my mind. I personally think brass looks better on them. Even when I do my Night Lords, which is my Horus Heresy army that I love, I try and stay away from the gold and head towards silvers and muted colours, because I just think, you know, if you're a force that deals with stealth, shiny gold is not a good idea. Okay. You know, things like Wraithbone for the bones, there's lots of painting to do on these. This is why I've not painted my Dark Apostle yet. It's why I chose to actually say I will start painting my custom chapter here. Hopefully you'll see why as we go through this, because it is complex to say the least. Okay then. A little bit about the 13th Black Crusade. Oh, look at that in the background there. Titans. Oh, I wish I could just afford a Titan. I just feel like my collection would be complete if I could just have that beautiful, one of these beautiful beasts standing in the middle of it. It would have to be an Imperial Titan for me because although I love Chaos Space Marines, I don't really have any other than the Combat Patrol, and it's actually my Imperial Guard army that's pride of place. Whether or not I would do it in the beautiful forest green of my my night house, I'm not sure, but anyway. Okay, imperial dates for the different crusades leading up to the 13th Black Crusade, and then a bit of the Chaos Gods, reading about Khorne. Actually, a little story, like a little narrative almost, depicting Khorne. Scarbrand, he's so cool. Scarbrand, the Bloodthirster. Bloodthirsters are just awesome as well. Cool thing is, if you decide to collect Chaos Demons as a force, you can use them in Age of Sigmar. So basically they're on little circular bases. Those circular bases can be used in Age of Sigmar. So if you collect a demon army for Warhammer 40,000, you can use it for Age of Sigmar easily. You could hypothetically use it for Warhammer the Old World as well, but there's an issue of base types. So Warhammer the Old World uses square bases, these use circular, so it can be a bit difficult transferring them across, but you can get base converters. Okay, loads of cool stuff about weapon abilities and a nice view of different types of weapons we might come across. Okay, and then an actual scenario, Servant of the Gods. What have we got here now? So it looks like it's another one of these where, depending on what the battle is, depends on what you end up on the board. So you could play this scenario with the Chaos Space Marines, aiming for different God's approval. Right then. And there we have it. That is our issue number 34. Now, coming up is another double issue, but I haven't got that yet, of Chaos Havocs, which, let's not be around the bush here. That's really cool, having those Havocs. Okay, so there we have it. The issues number 33 and number 34. Let's have a quick look at the models. Now, we've got quite a lot going on with these miniatures. So there are 10 Chaos Space Marines on this sprue. Chaos Space Marines themselves have gone through many iterations since I started collecting when I was like 10 years old. But there's certain things that always have been the same about them. Spikiness, signs of corruption, horns on helmets, these kind of power plants with the wide spacing to them. The design of the power plant, if memory serves, is based upon, I think, either the Mark II or Mark III one. And then, but the Mark II and Mark III kind of end there, whereas these then extend outwards. In other words, there's quite a lot of alterations over time. The general designation of this kind of armor is probably heresy armor that's been modified. But even then, if I'm looking at it, I would probably say that the whole idea is that it's not one particular armor mark. It's kind of constantly like modified, updated, cobbled together. If I were to say one thing that upsets me about these that I would really have loved to see, is that quite a few older marks of Chaos Space Marine armor, they used to have like studs with like rivets in them, which I really loved because it gave the impression that they'd obviously been repaired over time. Another good thing I like about this is you get lots of spare parts. Now, why are spare parts good? Great for converting. I'm just going to show you something here, why I like all the spare parts. These are my Horus Heresy Night Lords. Now, with my Horus Heresy Night Lords, you will probably see that I've got Chaos Space Marine weapons on them and Chaos Space Marine arms, actually from this set. These are my custom Night Lord Horus Heresy squads. What we have here is a kind of combination of the base Horus Heresy Corvus armor with Chaos Space Marine arms put on them, because quite frankly they look like they are slowly moving towards this, but they're not there yet, which I really like, and that's why I'm so pleased that I've got this, because I'm going to be able to make more of my custom Night Lords. I call these the Severed. Basically every single member of the squad has Red Hands of a Sinner, basically someone who didn't follow orders. So I'm so pleased that I've got these extra bits, because now I'm going to be able to make more of my Severed. Anyway, so that's another reason that I'm very happy. And with the Mark II Chaos Space Marines coming out, it's going to look even cooler combining these with the Mark II kit. Sorry, I'm going off on one now. I really need to finish the video. Anyway, so that's what we're aiming for. These Chaos Space Marines are going to be the Crimson Heralds. And hopefully very soon, after I've done all my build videos, which is going to take a while, I'm going to show you how I'm going to paint my custom successor chapter to the Word Bearers. So there we go. Chaos Space Marines, what a fantastic set of miniatures. I love these things. So I can't wait to build them, can't wait to paint them. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. I'll see you next time.